Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with the founder and CEO of Influence Mobile, Daniel Todd. As a reminder, if you like what you hear on today's episode, you can invest in Influence Mobile on WeFunder, regardless of whether or not you are accredited, with a minimum investment of $100 until September 30th, 2026. To say Daniel is one of the pioneers of the mobile ad industry would be an understatement. He's been building in the space for decades and founded Influence Mobile nearly 14 years ago. I'll start with the headline. This business generates $28 million in annual revenues by doing one thing better than anyone else. That mobile phone that's in your hand is full of apps you may never use or forget about. But Influence Mobile uses its technology to help mobile game companies both acquire and retain users through rewards programs. And as the $28 million in annual revenues would suggest, they have driven tens of millions of app downloads in their history. By the way, if you want to make sure you never miss deals like this, be sure to subscribe to my podcast so you get the weekly notifications. But what I love about Daniel is that he knows this industry like the back of his hand, and his knowledge of gamers, their behaviors, and how to win as a mobile game company is off the charts. That comes with decades of experience. For instance, one insight he shared with me that shocked me was that some of the biggest gamers in the world are not your teenage boy, but rather older women. But it's those insights about mobile gaming that bring some of the biggest gaming companies in the world to Influence Mobile. Something else that I took away from our conversation was just how large a market this is. Mobile gaming is nearly a $100 billion annual market. That's right, $100 billion is spent on mobile gaming every year. For someone like me that never plays, that shocked me, but it's true. And winning a piece of that pie is clearly worth a lot to developers. For that reason, Influence Mobile plays an indispensable role in player acquisition and retention at the top end. When you invest in Influence Mobile, you're not backing a startup. You're backing a well-established, well-oiled machine that is entering its next growth phase that you can be a part of. In the attention economy, Influence Mobile is winning. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Daniel. Daniel, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Chris. Really excited to chat with you.
For those who don't know you, give us a little bit of background on yourself and what Influence Mobile is all about.
Sure. So I've been an internet entrepreneur since the late 90s. Really got in right when Google was taking off, and we were trying to figure out how to actually give away free software back then and help people get something for free in exchange for advertising. And so I had some early successes there and some early failures. And what I wanted to take was all of the best parts that I learned and the worst parts to avoid and build that into what is Influence Mobile today. So I launched the company 14 years ago with the idea of using technology to influence people's future shopping experience. We shifted from sort of shopping, legitimate shopping through like Amazon, to people shopping and or spending money inside of games. That has kind of morphed into our business after our partnership with Facebook. And so we have an app called Rewarded Play. We invite, millions of people a year to basically come in and discover new games. While they're playing those games, they can quickly earn a $5 gift card and then hundreds of dollars. But what we're really doing is trying to find the people that spend a lot of money and time in games and give them roughly 10 to 20% cash back, which makes them very happy because some of these people are spending $5 to $50 a day in games. And so getting that money back is not convincing them to spend, but it does convince them to kind of stick around within our network, which makes our network more and more valuable to game developers. So more game developers come in and those players can get bigger rewards. And so that's been working very well for us.
It's not the business that I think a lot of people would at first think, oh, this is the home run. This is the one, right? Just because it's like you're finding people within games that could spend money, and then you're giving cash back, and somehow this is a big business. And but guess what? It is a big business, right? I've seen the numbers. You guys do quite well. Um, so first off, I have to ask you, like, how did you identify people who spend a lot of money in mobile games as like the core unit of person you were going to go after? And then how did you start to evolve and build a business model around that?
Sure. So the group we've always sort of focused on, because as I mentioned, I've been doing this since the late '90s, is a surprise to most people. It's older females. Older females tend to spend more money everywhere. They spend more money at the store. They spend more money in games, and so in my first business, that was a surprise, right? I grew up playing Atari and Nintendos, and I just assumed, like everybody else, that it was 20-year-old dudes who spent all this money in games.
Right.
And as we started building this first company, I was like, holy smokes, this group is really the most influential. And so when I started Influence Mobile, it was designed to figure out how to appeal to this older female audience. And like I said, initially I was really focused on affinity. So we partnered with celebrities like Jillian Michaels, who has a lot of older females, and we invited them to download a product for their computer, not their phone, and they could shop and earn rewards, and they went crazy with it. And then we partnered with Lindsay Lohan, who had a little bit younger audience. She invited people to download this software, but they all came on their mobile phones. And so we had like 9,000 people in 5 minutes complaining that they couldn't install, and this was like 2014. So we're like, okay, well, we got to get into mobile. So we started getting into mobile, and we just found like the cadence of real shopping is not enough to build a strong ongoing rewards ecosystem. And there are some who have done it, but I guess I should say it's not as strong as the cadence of daily gaming, right? And so
Yeah.
during that transition, as we moved into mobile, we needed to find new things for people to do every day because they don't shop every day. And so that's when we partnered with Facebook. Facebook said, hey, you can reward people however you want. We're like, can we give people points for trying new things? And they're like, sounds good. Those new things were primarily games. And in those first couple of days, months actually, people were just clicking on stuff, downloading games, but we didn't know what they were doing. And so we partnered with Facebook and said, hey, since we're partnering with you, why don't you give us the full like loop? And they're like, it's not our data to share. And, I'm like, it probably is. It's called Facebook Analytics. But they, eventually it was clear it wasn't going to get across the finish line with them. So we built our own product called Engage. But that whole time, even when we went into the sports world. So when we moved from celebrities, we started focusing on NFL sports, another genre that is surprisingly female dominant. 50% of NFL fans are females. And so we allowed anybody, but primarily these female sports fans, to earn a Russell Wilson jersey or hat or shoes, and they went crazy. And we started making millions of dollars, and that actually went pretty well. But there's a lot of seasonality with sports, and so we eventually launched Rewarded Play, and that just gave us a more kind of consistent boat to kind of market behind. And so instead of we had at one point in time 150 Android apps and 150 iOS apps. It was too much to maintain. So when we went to Rewarded Play, that focus on this older female audience has just been from day one kind of this foundation that I learned before. And it just so happens like it's where all the budget is for big games. And you mentioned the scope. Yeah, it's not obvious to people, but there's more money spent inside of mobile games than on all movies, all concerts, and all live sports ticketing combined.
That's amazing.
Like, if you think about how big Taylor Swift is, right? How much money her thing generates. Mobile gaming is so much bigger, right? It's more than all concerts and movies. And then it's disproportionately spent with this older female audience. And so I think that's the disconnect is people they don't understand the scope and the focus. And then even within that group of older females, it's like 1% to 2% that spend over 50% of the money. Like it's incredibly concentrated, like nothing else. And so, yeah, it's given us a unique opportunity to build a pretty cool product.
Help folks who are not gamers, especially mobile gamers, help us understand what do these games look like and what are they spending money on in the game?
Sure, it varies very much, right? There's as many different kinds of games for every kind of player, but we focus on what are called casual mobile games. So these are games like Candy Crush, which many people have heard of, or Monopoly Go, the most successful mobile game of all time.
Hmm.
In Monopoly Go, you're playing on a board that looks like a Monopoly board, and you're buying dice rolls. So you get to play the game by rolling the dice, and you move around the board and you collect money. Uh, just like normal Monopoly money, and then you can do different things within the game socially. You can do different things for a team. They've done a very good job creating a very fun dynamic. There's collectibles, there's all kinds of things. But fundamentally, many games have avoided you being able to spend money to win the game. You
Hmm.
can just play the game more consistently, right? So, right, you might start with 100 dice rolls for free, and you could go through those in 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and you have to wait a certain amount of time. But if you spend $5, you get 1,000 rolls, and you can play more.
Hmm.
That is largely what you get in some games, like this new game that Scopely just got called Pixel Flow. It's a very fun game. Uh, these little pigs go around and shoot these colored blocks in the middle. You buy, I would call it like helper objects, right? So extra spaces so you can shoot more pigs, different kinds of things. So every game has difference. There's social casino games where people are playing, casino-like games. They're not winning real money, but they're buying coins to pull the slot machine down. So it's very broad, but it's
Yeah.
basically just ways to spend more time playing your game.
Hmm. In terms of, these users are getting money back, like you're providing incentives where they can actually get money back from playing the game. How does that business model work? I imagine the game company is paying you in that.
We've tried all kinds of different models, as you might imagine, but for just administrative purposes, effectively, we've earned the right now to just get paid upfront on install. So when a game
Hmm.
developer creates a relationship with us, they say, hey, we'll give you X budget per day, and we'll pay you X price per install. And sometimes we're even moving away from that, where they just give us their metrics, their short-term return on ad spend, and then we adjust the price dynamically to make sure we're always hitting those numbers.
Hmm.
Uh, but they pay us up front, and then we set aside a portion of that money to create this multi-month rewards program. So it's on us. We don't get paid more when we give people money back. We just know that it's a very small percentage of players doing it. And
Hmm.
so the bulk of players who don't spend effectively subsidize the small percentage that do, right? So there's
Right.
lots of players who come in and they can earn, 20, 30, $50 a month playing games, but they're not going to earn thousands of dollars a year like some of
Right.
these players, because many of the rewards, because this has to obviously work for everybody, many of the rewards either rely on massive gameplay, right?
Right.
Like you have to be playing 20 hours a day to earn, to get all those dice rolls, for example, or you spend $99 and you get 20,000 dice rolls and you can proceed much faster. Well, you're more likely to do that if you've got this, $250 bonus sitting in front of you that you're like, hey, if I can get to level 1,000 in Monopoly Go in the next month, I get this huge payoff. So that creates another layer of gamification on top of that.
Hmm.
And those people who are already inclined to spend are going to spend a little bit more generously, and then they get hooked on the gameplay, right? All of
Hmm.
this is designed to get people kind of past the normal times where they might leave a game, right? We want them to fall in love with that game and then want to keep playing. And then that game dynamic has been built in by the game developers.
Is there any consumer facing element of your business, or is this all kind of behind the scenes and they don't even know Influence Mobile is really involved?
No, they download the Rewarded Play app, right? So
Okay.
our interface is an app, and as I mentioned, we've had lots of different apps. In fact, we're relaunching on iOS this month. We're just waiting for iOS approval, and then we're going to go back to those kind of partnerships. It's really, really where the biggest growth is that I mentioned, like the Jillian Michaels and the Ashley Tisdales and Shay Mitchells and Lindsay Lohans. There's humongous amounts of influencers in the world today and brands, and we want to go back and now take this platform that we've built and say, hey, we can white label this so you have the relationship. And in those circumstances, we would be kind of more behind the scenes, and we're fine with that. But right now, yeah, whether they know it's Influence Mobile, I mean, it's kind of a small name, on the list. They're interacting with us through the Rewarded Play app. So most of them would know that name.
You mentioned growth, and you mentioned something before that earlier, which was, if you think about the overall market, it turns out that women is the older women is the category you're going after, and it's that top 1 to 2% that are like deeply valuable. So when you think kind of about like your market saturation opportunity to continue to grow, how much opportunity is there in front of you from where you are today, where you are doing tens of millions in revenue?
Yeah, there's a lot of growth because there's like we're not betting on a single game, even though we have some very strong game partners. Games come and go, right?
Hmm.
But I've been doing this for 30 years, and the same older women are still playing the same kind of match three games that they played in the 90s. They're just owned by a different company, and those companies spend tens of millions of dollars developing these games, and they need users, they need players, they need people like us. And for the most part, they don't want to spend more of their budget with Google and Facebook, who dominate budgets, right?
Hmm.
So they're always looking for diversification, and then more specifically, high quality diversification, right? And so the opportunity for us is really everybody who spends money, everybody who plays games, because there's people who play our games for 6 months and then they leave and then they come back 6 months later. It's the same with every kind of game. So you're not really, it's not like if you downloaded our app once, Chris, and then left, you might not ever come back. So you can kind of get an evergreen group of players driving the model. What we want, though, is these people, like a lot of players who've already invested with us on the WeFunder campaign that we've launched, have been using our app for 5 or 6 years. That's the group that we want to stick around. As we disproportionately keep this audience and grow that bigger and bigger, the next game comes, they're going to want a game, right? Those players are going to want a game, and that game company is going to want those players. And so that connection you can just kind of renew over and over and over again.
I imagine now you've been in market long enough where the largest games kind of know, like, okay, like we're looking, as part of our growth strategy, we have to work with an influence mobile. Um, so in terms of kind of selling new developers or maybe current developers on their new games to work with you, what does that process look like? How hard is it to win these folks over?
So it varies, but we have had the benefit of being awarded based on these third-party companies. They're called MMPs, Management Marketing Partners. The largest one is called AppsFlyer. Starting, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, they started releasing sort of a best of
Mm.
list, and we have made that list every single year. And there were a few years where we were the top two or three. So our little tiny company was listed up next to Google and Facebook in terms of finding these high value players and keeping them around. And I would believe that that is the best endorsement you can have. And
Yeah.
so we have had the luxury for most of the last many years, while we go to conferences and we meet new people, we tend to get a constant influx of new game developers. Or what happens is, this is very common, somebody who's working with us from game company A leaves game company A and goes to game company B, and they're like, oh, you should be working with Influence Mobile. And so we get a lot of cross pollination. That actually is one of the biggest sources, right? Because once they've worked with us and they see the quality, they are always switching back and forth between different games companies and then coming our way. And then, not every single game is a perfect fit in our ecosystem. And so some games test out and don't work, or they work but not at a high enough price point to get enough volume, right? And so, we're not a fit for every single games company, but we're constantly improving our products. And then, to finalize the question, we go to conferences, we talk to people, but that has never really been, like, if you doubled the number of game developers we have, it wouldn't double revenue. Like, they're
Mm.
all competing for this finite amount of traffic. It's growing the audience and then keeping that audience around longer was where the growth comes from. And that's where, relative to the scale of the universe, we have maybe 1 million monthly active users, and there's
Mm.
lots and lots. So I mean, we could get 100 times bigger and still not be scraping the bottom of the barrel of growth. So
When you think about average dollar size of an engagement, what does that look like and how long do these often run?
So our longest partners have been with us since the very beginning when we really started. Like we didn't really go direct until about 2018. Um, and I think I can mention this, but Scopely was one of our very first partners. They've been with us through that whole time. There've been other game developers who come and go. There's some games, quite honestly, that launch. I'm like, how does this even work? Like, I'm like, this game is not very good. And so our goal isn't to keep every single one of them, but the average one, I would say, it's hard to say because there's very big games companies, and
Yep.
there's not a lot of them, and the game companies could spend, $500,000 a month, $1 million a month, um, and that adds up to tens and tens of millions of dollars over the lifetime of the relationship.
Yeah.
That's not that typical because that's not very many of those games companies, but there's at least a few dozen companies like that, and then
Mm.
we have games companies who are mom and pop places, and they've only got one game, and they spend $100 a day or $500 a day with us, and we work to make that profitable for them as well. And those maybe come and go a little bit faster because they just don't have the same kind of budgets as the big guys.
When you think about why you're raising the capital, what it'll be applied to, how do you think about these dollars raised in terms of growth strategy?
So, what I'm most excited about with this, and one of the reasons we're doing it, is we have never had the opportunity to sort of engage our long term players around our business concept, right? And it's been very exciting to see them coming in being like, "Oh, I've used this app, and I've purposely not like said on the WeFunder page, wow, Susie, you've earned $1,200 from us, right? Like,
Right.
I want to say like these people have earned significant money. This is why they're saying like, oh yeah, I'll put in $100, I'll put in $250 because they see the validation. And that's the part I'm most excited about is like people who really get the concept as we start to expand into iOS, we start to expand into these other brands. Like it's just very easy, and it's like 5 years ago, people called us a scam all the time because people are like, how can you possibly earn rewards playing games? And so now, we paid out over $40 million. We've had all these players who've been around years and years and years, and so them getting involved and kind of being our ambassadors is the number one goal, right? I mean,
Mm.
we've raised money. We've raised more money from traditional investors than we're raising right now. But I like this opportunity because if you can get it done, which it's hard, it's harder to do. It's harder to
Yeah.
raise from thousands and thousands of people. But then you have this built-in connection to not only players who are using your app every day, they get a benefit of that reward, but they're going to get a little bit of the benefit of the growth. And that's what's most exciting to me. And it's hard, again, because I'm not sure that this older female audience is your traditional tech investors.
Sure.
But we do see them rolling in, and we see them leaving positive comments. And I think once you can get that base up there's another company in our space who has 60,000 investors, and
Mm.
they're doing this, not exactly the same model. And so we know it can work. It just
Yeah.
takes some time to get the word out. So
In terms of exit, do you see this as an acquisition? And if so, is this, another mobile gaming or advertising company? How do you think about exit?
so we've had a few opportunities and turned some of them down. It really runs the gamut. I would say it's not unlikely to be a games company, but it has to be the right games company because uh, in some places, the thought is if a games company buys us, no other games company is going to want to run with us. Now, for some games companies that have enough games, that's fine with them, right?
Yeah.
So that was some of the people we've talked to, but there's been a tremendous amount of growth just in the number of competitors in our space recently, and so I would say there's a focus on rolling up different players in the space, and so we've had a few people who are doing quite well in that roll up
Mm.
strategy come knocking on our door, and so I think that's likely where it would happen. But to be honest with you, I think there's a bigger roll up strategy because there are shopping rewards apps and gas rewards apps and all kinds of rewards apps. And like none of those things, and those companies are very successful. So I don't want to take anything from them, but you don't fill up your gas tank every day and you don't go shopping every day. Unless
Mm.
you're wife, unless you're my wife, she does feel like she can go shopping every day on Amazon. But people do play games. They play like 5 or 6 times a day, and so we really think rewarded play, the platform, is the best foundation for an ongoing kind of cadence with this audience. And then you can layer on gas rewards. And now all of a sudden, if someone's getting gas at Chevron instead of Shell, they get more points in their pixel flow game. That's always been my vision, is like leverage your spending to enhance your gameplay. And that's it's a very big task to put together, but I see that more and more as an opportunity. And so whether that's us eventually scaling and being able to roll up those things, we wanted to build the rewarded life so people could have a credit card that rolls into this. Like you can figure out, I mean, the average person spends a lot of money on all these other areas, and if that can be synced up and think about it just like a credit card reward program, but unified across all this other kind of stuff. So I think there's this very big opportunity, and we're going to be part of that, whether we ultimately can scale enough to be acquiring other companies, or we fit into our slot as the masters at keeping this older female audience gaming world, and we're part of somebody else's. That's probably the two options. And I don't think it's as far away as it once was. I think there are people who are planning to, once the market kind of turns around, I think the next wave of growth will see a lot of consolidation in this space, probably, hopefully, 2-3 years from or less.
I want to give you the last word here. For those investors who are on the line or thinking about investing, but they're not there just yet, what do you want them to know?
So I've been doing this a long time. And my original premise, and actually the name of the company originally was Affinity Influencing Systems. And I mentioned we partnered with all those celebrities. And what you get when you can partner with people of influence is higher levels of trust, higher conversion rates, and higher retention rates. And that is so absolutely important in this world when you start to scale to hundreds of millions of people. And so because we moved away from iOS because of iOS rules that have now shifted back in our favor, we have not been able to pursue white label with this new business model. But we have, I've been doing this a long time, and this is the strongest, most powerful business product that I've ever participated in. And I've built products that have almost generated $1 billion in the last 25 years. And now we're getting to go back and circle around to add in the affinity component. We're talking to some of the biggest brands in the world that talk to 9 out of 10 Americans every single week, or have an extremely concentrated audience in this older group. We're talking to a lot of different people. And when we can apply our kind of platform now into that group, it's going to be a way, way different level. We made the Inc. 5000 4 years in a row just on Android, just with this product. If we can go on iOS and create a white label partnership or two that are the kind of levels we used to be at, it's going to be a whole new ballgame. I'm very excited for that.
If you like what you heard on the show today, you can invest $100 or more in Influence Mobile on WeFunder until September 30th, 2026. And of course, if you want to learn more about this company, you can go to kingscrowd.com and search Influence Mobile. For more episodes like these, click the like or subscribe button to hear more amazing interviews with founders just like Daniel. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.